Want help to grow your business? Download BRiN, the world's first business advisor in your pocket. To find out more, visit BRiN.ai or search the App Store today.
Hi, I'm Pip McKay and I'm really excited to be here and to be able to share with you some really practical tools to beat overwhelm and procrastination. Now, one of the things I love about Business Blueprint is when you come here, you really learn all the business strategies you could possibly want in order to have a successful business. But one of the things we all understand is that without the mindset being right and being able to apply those strategies, then we won't be able to really get the results that we're looking for. And so Dale Beaumont asked me to come here and talk to you about mindset and to really give you some new and unique ways of looking at how we can beat procrastination and overwhelm. So I want you to know that I'm also a business owner, and when I first came to Business Blueprint, I really felt like I had found the Holy Grail because I had been a bit bored in my business. It'd been running for about 12 years. I was running an NLP training organisation. And I had been creating my own tools and my own techniques, but I didn't really know how to market them and how to take them to a new and wider audience. So when I came to my first conference, I've discovered all these new strategies, particularly about social media, how to organise my business. I also learned how to look at different email strategies, and there was just so much work to do, and I was really excited. And then I came home and I was sitting at my desk and I was like, oh no, what am I going to do? I've got to continue running my old business as it is because that's how I bring in cash flow. But now I'm creating a whole new business and I've also got to apply all these new strategies. I don't want to waste my time. I really want to get into it. And all of a sudden I had this moment where Game of Thrones looked really attractive. I don't know which one's your one, but Game of Thrones was mine. And I even had a moment where I thought the washing up looked attractive, and that's when you really know that you're procrastinating. And so I stopped and I took a bit of a deep breath and I thought, okay, what do I know about human psychology? What do I know about strategies and NLP for mindset? And so I took some of my strategies from NLP, but I also looked at one of my passions, which is horse whispering and understanding animal psychology. And I started to bring those together to give us a whole unique insight into the way that we can work with our own nature so that we don't find ourselves escaping just at that moment when we really need to be working. So one of the things that I find interesting about overwhelm and procrastination is that it's just not logical. You'd think that when you've got more work to do, that would be the time when you're really getting on to it. But what I find for most people is that the more they've got to do, that's exactly the moment when overwhelm and procrastination starts to come around. And this is because it isn't logical. And I think it's really important for us to understand a little bit about the mind. So I had the privilege years ago to meet one of Australia's preeminent scientists, and his name's Professor Snyder, and he works at the Centre for the Mind at Sydney University. And he said that the conscious mind is only about 4% of the mind's capacity. We used to think it was about 10%, but he says that it's much smaller than that. And that the unconscious mind is a whopping, therefore, 96% of the mind's capacity. And when we're doing something that is completely illogical, we know that that's not really coming from the conscious mind, that there's something going on in the unconscious mind that we're not understanding. And one of the interesting things about the unconscious mind is not only does that work with memory and imagination, but the unconscious mind is also in control of our body. And it's really interesting because our body also affects the unconscious mind, and that in turn affects the way that we think. So often we think of ourselves as human beings and we don't really realise that as human beings we also have an animal nature. and that we have two forms of animal nature. We have a predatory animal nature, which is goal setting and going after goals, and we have a prey animal nature, which is much more like our fear response, our worry about being attacked, a sense of not belonging, all comes from that prey animal behaviour. Because when you have a fear response or you don't feel like you belong, that's exactly the moment that a prey animal would be attacked and therefore not survive. So these things are all going on in our unconscious mind, and they start to explain what is going on. So just to recap for a moment, we normally procrastinate and feel overwhelmed when we've got too many choices. So I put this slide up here. I was wondering whether it was appropriate or not, but it is art. But I think sometimes we can feel like there's just too much of a good thing. And in that moment, we might then feel like we're overwhelmed and procrastinate. And then we waste time. So we go and do something that is not relevant to our business success, not relevant to us making money, not relevant to us really contributing what we want to contribute to our world. And when we waste that time, what often happens is people get upset with themselves, and then they kind of bash themselves up. And the more they bash themselves up, the more upset they get, the more they procrastinate. So it's kind of like a vicious circle. And often at this point in time, people will look at other people's success and compare themselves to that, and then they'll feel even worse about themselves, and it just becomes a vicious cycle. So we really want to be able to interrupt this cycle and take one calm step at a time. And this is where my work with horses has given me some unique insights that usually we wouldn't understand. So I want to introduce you to this horse. Her name is Bella, and she's one of a big herd of horses that I work with down in Albury, and I take groups of people down there. And one morning I woke up really early in the morning. It was about 5 a.m. And suddenly I felt this real urge to look out the window. And I looked out the window, and Bella was on her side, and sticking out of Bella was a little foot. And she was giving birth. And so I went outside, and because I've got a relationship with Bella, I was able to sit with her while she gave birth. And then she let me touch her foal straight after it was born. And this is called imprinting, and it means that that foal will remember you and think that you're its mother from then on. And even 2 years later, when I went back there and I hadn't seen her, she just came running up to me and followed me around, and she wasn't doing that with anybody else. Now, we take this sort of thing almost for granted with domestic animals, particularly horses, and we forget that really, if that horse was in the wild, we would look to that horse like a mountain lion, because we have eyes in the front of our head and we have little laid back ears. Whereas a horse or any prey animal has eyes at the side of their head and sticky up ears so that they can hear a predator approach and they can see almost all the way around themselves. And so what's interesting about human beings is that even though we have these predatory eyes, so we can set goals, we can hunt, we can go after things, we're also very much like a prey animal because we're so vulnerable. We don't have big claws, we don't have sharp teeth, we have soft, beautiful skin. Imagine what we look like to a lion. It's just like we'd just be the most juiciest thing that it could possibly run after. And not only that, advantage for a lion, we don't run very fast either. So somehow deep in our psychology, we know that we're also a prey animal. And this is actually what explains the phenomenon of overwhelm and procrastination. Because what happens is when we feel overwhelmed, we just stop. We're stuck, and we're behaving as if we're surrounded by lions. And we don't want to go and do a task over here, because if we do, we might get attacked from behind by a lion. And this is how a lot of people behave in their business. They're sitting there and they're going, I can't start those 3 months of emails I need to get out of the way in terms of writing them, which would bring in a lot of food and nourishment, because if I focus on that, suddenly some task might attack me from behind. And so when people are doing that, they're behaving like this prey animal. And what we want to do is we want to change that psychology into predatory psychology, because predatory psychology goes, there is a goal, a task that I want to complete. I'm going to hunt that task and I'm going to get it done, and then I'll be nourished. Because after all, a lion doesn't sit there and go, oh my goodness, there's so many zebras, I'm so overwhelmed. A lion goes, wow, heaps of zebras, fantastic. And then what a lion does is, because it has a strategizing mind, it goes, okay, there's heaps of zebras. Let me think about which zebra I'm going to go for. I have to think, am I alone? And if the lion's alone, it's just going to go after a small and sickly animal, and particularly if it's tired. And then it's just going to get that animal, and then it's going to be nourished, and then it can think about doing something bigger. Or if this lion is in a big pride of lions, then it might go, wow, there's a big team here. Let me bring down a hippopotamus, and then that can feed the whole team for ages, and all of us will be nourished by something really big. And this is the mindset that we want to move into. So it doesn't matter whether you're a vegetarian or not, we can still all do hunting behaviour, because really a prey animal is doing gathering behaviour. All it does is crop a little bit of grass, and it's just cropping grass all over the place. And the whole time it's just hyper vigilant, looking out for where is the attack going to come from. And a lot of business owners just behaving like this all of the time. And then it's every email comes in, is that an attack? Then suddenly all the things on the to-do list become another set of attack. And then they go home and suddenly their family wants to hug them, and they're like rearing up and pushing their family away, saying, you know, look, it's too much, get away from me. And really they're behaving like a horse, and that a hug becomes the way a lion surrounds a prey animal and bites it. And that's really sad, because then people are becoming reactive to their family and responding as if it's an attack. And this is another aspect of the prey animal. The prey animal is always responding to the environment. So the prey animal is always going, which is the biggest threat? I have to react to the biggest threat. Whereas a predatory animal is the influencing factor. It's in control of its environment. It sets a goal, it goes after the goal, and things react to it. And as a business owner, and particularly as a leader, we need to really move into being the influencing factor rather than the prey influenced factor. Instead of going, oh gosh, that person's angry, that's a big threat, I have to do whatever they want and I have to drop everything to do that, it becomes, no, hang on a minute. What is the most important thing in my business? What is going to give me an opportunity to eat? Now, the other thing that's really important too is that a prey animal does not suddenly multitask or suddenly change goals in mid-flight. It has to go for it. So, for instance, if you look at a female cheetah, because she expends so much energy in her run, she can only do 3 runs before she starves to death. So she's not going to pick an animal and then start running towards it and then go, oh, I don't know, maybe that animal looks better, and suddenly stop and go after a different animal, because otherwise she's only got 3 goes. You can imagine how intense that would be. Imagine if you only had 3 goes at something and you starved to death and your family starved to death as well. Imagine how focused you would be on getting a result. It was really interesting one time, because I've just come back from Africa at the beginning of the year, and we watched this cheetah mother, and she was like slowly stalking this.
To continue enjoying this presentation, download BRiN, the world's first business advisor in your pocket. To find out more, visit BRiN.ai or search the App Store today.